Hi everyone and welcome, and thanks so much to the organisers for inviting me to speak today at the Victorian Spatial Showcase and eSummit. Can I start first by acknowledging the traditional owners on the lands on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also to any elders and emerging leaders that join us today. So today I'm going to be discussing about the work of the Commissioner, the work that I do with my science team on environmental reporting, and specifically the work we're doing on implementing the SDGs for environmental reporting in Victoria, why that's important, and also the importance of the role of spatially enabled data in harnessing the power of the SDGs. Spatial technology offers us new levels of intelligence to quantify, analyse and unlock the transformative potential of the SDGs as a framework for decision-making for sustainable development in a way we didn't have before we had the UN SDGs. But it's the data that's important too, if we're going to quantify that and track our progress. Data tells us what, but spatially enabled data tells us where. Knowing where to act, what are we going to do and where are we going to do it, is so critical for protecting the environment and building resilient communities, location by location. So let me start first just by talking a little bit about what we do in environmental reporting. The reports that we do from the office are independent science reports on the health of the environment. We do a suite of reports, but the one I want to talk about today is the Victorian State of the Environment 2018 report. That was tabled in the Victorian Parliament in March 2019. It was the first time that the UN SDGs had been aligned to environmental reporting in Victoria by the Commissioner, and we reported against 170 indicators and aligned them with 52 UN SDG targets. That report's available on our website, but it tells us broadly three stories. It tells us about the current health of Victoria's natural environment. It talks to us about the adequacy of our science program. And importantly, we look at future focus and make recommendations on what we need to do next. There's 20 recommendations in that report, and they do include recommendations in relation to the SDGs, international frameworks for reporting, as well as the important role of investing in spatial data and spatial technologies. So firstly, the UN SDGs and why the UN SDGs are important. It's really important that we understand why are we implementing the SDGs for environmental reporting. It makes sense to me, and hopefully after I explain it, it'll make sense to you. So the SDGs are being applied to our work to broaden the focus of environmental reporting to better address economic, social and environmental considerations. This enhancement, if you like, of our ability to use a broader framework for reporting will provide us with a depth of science and storytelling about the natural environment that can reflect the very broad and diverse views and complexity of our environment and the needs of Victorians. The SDGs, as you can see, have 17 goals. They cover critical areas, but there's 4 really important aspects of the SDG framework that make it highly relevant for my work as Commissioner and for the environmental reports that we provide. The SDGs provide a pre-prosecuted framework for reporting across complex and disparate areas of social, economic, environmental policy. So the framework is pre-prosecuted, and as any of us who've worked on developing consensus or getting policies across the line, having a pre-prosecuted framework where there's broad agreement is fundamental. It's a framework that's internationally agreed and widely supported. So when we do our reports, we're not just talking in a parochial Victorian sense, we're talking to the world as well and tracking our progress at that level. It's a common language for measuring progress against diverse goals and targets that has broad support across government, business and the community. And as I said, it means that we can track our progress at the local level, right through to the state level, and of course to the national and global level. really important aspects. So for us, we feel that the UN SDGs are the missing link to develop a framework to track our progress towards ecologically sustainable development and fulfil the requirements of the Act on which I work under, but more broadly, so that we can develop a better understanding of what's happening, the interconnected aspects of what's happening, and ultimately make the very best recommendations we can to government and community on what we should focus on. So one of the important aspects of State of the Environment reporting is, as I said, it's tabled in the Victorian Parliament, and we use the scientific evidence-based and synthesis of the systems approach to develop recommendations for government. There's 20 recommendations in the 2018 SoE. I've listed probably what I think are my top 5, if you like, and you can read them there. But it's very clear, as highlighted in yellow, that I believe that enhanced technology and data sources and investment in such, including Earth observation, spatial and real-time data, is one of the top priority areas for government to focus on and is included in the recommendations. Naturally, we're very keen on applying international frameworks in addition to the SDGs, the UN System of Environmental Accounts. And we're making recommendations about these tools and capabilities and frameworks because they're required, we believe, to address, and I believe, to address the really difficult issues such as the status of our biodiversity indicators showing 75% of the 35 indicators assessed were in decline or the status unknown. Spatial and Earth observation can give us a huge leg up on not only understanding but improving biodiversity outcomes, for example, as well as climate change impacts. So recommendation 18 specifically is listed there. That's recommendation 18 from the SoE 2018. And it is that DELP, the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, develop its spatial information capability and database and ensure it's regularly and routinely updated to inform decision-making across the environment portfolio. So I just wanted to make it really clear to you all, excuse me, who work in this sector, that we are not passive in our recommendations to government in the spatial area or in the SDG area. We are backing in the science, backing in the understanding that we've developed. And we're saying, if you look at SoE 2018, recommendations 18, 19 and 20 are about spatial and frameworks for reporting at the international as well as the local level. So all of that work that we did in 2018 leads us to what we're working on now, which is just building on that, if you like. In June this year, we tabled the Science for Sustainable Development Framework. That is the framework that we will, that sets out the approach for how we'll develop the SoE 2023 report. But more importantly, there's a whole suite of reports that we do in the interim as part of our work, independent science reports that are subsets, if you like, in one way of the SoE 2023. They're all legislated, and they all continue to lean in and adopt the SDGs to express and quantify more than ever before the concept of ecological sustainable development. Really importantly, we apply in this framework, we commit to applying the SDGs and we commit to really 3 levels of synthesis of our data. So we're saying we'll do the traditional condition reporting. Environmental condition reporting is traditional and we won't move away from that. We'll also track our progress against the SDGs at the target level, and we'll also do an analysis of the interlinkages of at the target level of the indicators that we are reporting against. It's quite complex. We're developing that method, but it will rely heavily on access to data, because we can express whatever we like, but we can't quantify, we can't measure if we don't have data. And this is where the application of spatial technologies and our ability to access spatial data at scale more often is just fundamental to applying the SDGs as a framework. Otherwise, the labour intensity, if you like, of the data acquisition process would be punitive. So just getting on to spatial data specifically and what's happening, I think it's really important to talk about what's already going on. So we're committing to using spatial data to apply the SDG framework that's set out in the Science for Sustainable Development framework. But I really love this work. I'm so proud of the work that Delph have done here. It's really important for our work. What you see here is an image from the Victorian Land Cover Time Series that was released by the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning in Victoria on the 23rd of July 2020. And it was such an important milestone for land cover information gathering and how we view, interpret and analyse Victoria's vegetation and urban areas. So the Land Cover Time Series charts land cover changes across the state between 1987 and 2019. So a really, really long, 30 years, which is a really great time series and period of time for us to look at trends. The data sets feature spatial layers representing different time periods. Each layer presents the most likely land cover class for that area, and it models land cover across the state, including native vegetation, so herbaceous, woody and wetland, intensive agriculture and recreation, forestry and built environment, and of course urban areas. So while there's many of you viewing this that are much more spatially literate than me, what we do know is this gives us a whole lot of information, and depending on the machine learning algorithms, etc., we can do a whole lot of stuff with spatial data that we couldn't do before. And I think that's the point. We can monitor trends, we can access data. So the work done here is a starting point, the digital twinning in relation to the data time series. So what the land looked like at different times, and it's doing it just for land and biodiversity at the moment, but I'm sure will be expanded. And as I said, really proud of the work that has been done here, and really grateful because it will add value to our work in the Commissioner's Office. Now, we're not Robinson Crusoe, knowing that spatial investment in spatial data, remote sensing and data visualisation systems is critical, not only for environmental management, reporting, developing the data we need to report on the SDGs, etc. The Royal Commission into Natural Disasters, the National Royal Commission into Natural Disaster Arrangements, interim observations, is making recommendations around spatial data. Recommendations 4 and 18 out of the New South Wales Bushfire Royal Commission, also really, really important for investment and people looking in this area. I draw your attention to those recommendations in New South Wales, in the New South Wales report as well. So what this all bodes really well for us in the non-disaster area, because the more the investment that is coming through these technologies and these capabilities across the board for our emergency response capability, the more access we'll get to data in non-emergency settings. So this is just a change of pace here, but I really love this. One of my colleagues was taking me through this building footprint work, and I was talking to him about, what does this tell us? And he said, this just tells us so much. And so I just wanted to share this with you. And this is a building footprint, and the data sets are used to properly understand people and their interactions with the built environment. And the key here, as you would know, is that using machine learning and depending on the indicator you determine that you want to gather information on, you'll get the information on that particular thing, whether it's buildings, whether it's cars, whether it's trees, whatever it is you want to know about the environment at the time, where people are living, how they're living, what are the changes going on over time. what I'm hoping in our collaborations with people who know so much more about this than I do, and apologies if I've misrepresented any of it, but I'm very excited by it, and I know it has huge potential for developing and providing the socioeconomic data that we need to report against the SDGs long term. As I said, the SDGs as a framework is complex in one way. Getting the data that you need, more data more often about more things at scale, is sort of more like the holy grail of what the real challenge is in implementing the SDGs. So this is another great visuals here. Really, you could just look at these pictures all day, couldn't you? Roebuck Bay in WA, it's a Ramsar wetland site and globally significant habitat for migratory birds. I suppose if you look here, the point I want to make is that one of our issues is getting access to information in various difficult locations. So remote locations such as Roebuck Bay are easily dealt with in terms of data using spatial technology. So if you look on the left, that is low tide. If you look in the middle, we've got high tide. The really cool picture on the right with the red and the yellow is telling us about the intertidal zone, and so much about the intertidal zone is so important for understanding the health of the habitat, land and water, and the potential here for us to understand our marine and intertidal zone environments is just groundbreaking in my view. So space and spatial and digital technologies will help us measure progress against the UN SDGs. We have that capability now. We continue to invest in it. And we know, and I know, that it is the future. It offers us another level of access to data and a new level of sense making, if you like. So we don't want data just for the sake of it. It's spatial data combined with, you know, the machine learning and the various algorithms that can really make sense of what is it we're seeing and what do we need to do to improve it. I mean, we know this intuitively. We see it every day in emergencies. Sadly, we're seeing our emergency responders using predictive data to tell us what's going to happen next and, you know, what we need to do when, to the extent that a bushfire might be raging or coming upon us. But the same potential is there if we can access data and those models in non-emergency times. That level of sense making is fundamental to unlocking the transformative potential of the SDG. Without the data and without the ability to make sense of the data and populate a framework that helps us understand the common purpose of sustainable development, it's so much more difficult to build resilient communities, and we are well on the way in Victoria. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that. Apologies to any really technical practitioners if I've, for my use of language, if I've got anything wrong. I'm a really strong advocate and true believer in the important role of space and spatial technologies, both for their use in their own right, but also for unlocking the transformative potential of the SDGs. And it's been just such an honour to share some of our work and some of my thoughts with you today. Have a great day. Thanks.